Welcome to Between Two Nerds. My name is Nick Stowe, the state's Chief Technology Officer, and today I have with me a very special version of a nerd, a privacy nerd, Katy Ruckle.
One of the rarest nerds.
You're one of the rarest nerds there is. Please, can you tell me what is your role and why are you a privacy nerd?
Oh, well, my role as the Chief Privacy Officer is to basically run the privacy program for the state and be a leader for privacy for the state of Washington. So I have an office, which is the Office of Privacy and Data Protection. And through that, we have a lot of duties that are in statute. And that gets into the law nerd side of the privacy nerd.
Legal nerd and privacy nerd. Very cool.
I am a firm believer that anybody that goes to law school is a nerd. Just because you have to study a lot when you're in law school.
That makes sense. So tell me more, especially for like a lot of the topics we've had on Between Two Nerds are more technology centric. So we had architecture with Rob, we had data with Irene and GIS with Joanne. We haven't had we've talked about privacy a little bit, but for the audience, let's assume they don't know as much about the importance of privacy. So if you were explaining this in kind of a plain talked way, what is privacy and why is it important?
Okay, so to first bring the privacy and legal nerd out, it was first articulated really by the Warren and Brandeis Harvard Law Review legal opinion, which was, yes, that is deep nerd, but all privacy nerds know this, where they talked about the right of privacy was really boiled down to the right to be let alone is sort of how it was phrased. But we think about that in terms of privacy and how we operationalize it in the state in three bigger buckets, which is territorial privacy. So thinking of things like your home or your car or your property, those types of things. Bodily privacy. So whether or not, our bodies can be invaded and those types of things, whether we can be searched. We give up some privacy, obviously, when we go to the airport and go through security, those types of things. And then what we focus on the most in the state is really information privacy. So that's really where our bread and butter is when it comes to talking about the laws and statutes and the intersection of privacy and technology.
Wow. There's a lot more to the privacy nerdverse than I thought. Well, I really appreciate you breaking it down that way. So let's stick with information privacy. And specifically, I'm assuming the practice and the discipline of information privacy has changed a lot as technology has advanced and technology has been more integrated in the way we live our lives. So can you tell me about your experience and maybe your offices and your program's experience with how the evolution of technology has impacted privacy and how privacy has had to adjust to that?
Right. So really going back again, if we go back to the 1970s is when the fair information privacy principles came into being. And then that is really where the Privacy Act of 1974 was put into law. And that really was the impetus for that was computers and the recognition by lawmakers that, wow, computers are coming on the scene and they are able to hold and collect a lot more data than, filing cabinets and those types of things. So that's sort of where it started. FIPS is like the granddaddy for privacy principles, the way we think about that. And those concepts were integrated in lots of different laws in the US. And so there's sort of this legal privacy scholar debate, I guess, around how privacy has evolved in Europe and how privacy has evolved in the US. And Europe, we've seen the GDPR, which is the General Data Privacy Regulation. And in the United States, our privacy laws are much more sectoral. So we have privacy laws around finance, we have privacy laws around education, privacy laws around health. And so that's where we see different sectoral privacy laws and not just one encompassing consumer privacy protection law.
It must make your job challenging when you've got all these different sectoral privacy laws, and then you've got, I'm assuming, different privacy principles or laws in different states across the U.S. And so I love that you brought up data, by the way, because at some level, everyone's a data nerd. So can you tell me a little bit more? So other than kind of different jurisdictional or international applications of privacy law. What are some of the other challenges that come about that you are maybe helping agencies or the public with when it comes to the intersection of privacy and technology?
Right. So with the evolution that I was talking about is that now we are able to collect so much more personal information about individuals than we really ever have been before. And so that really has been because of technology. And then there's so many different ways to analyze and slice and dice. And we can make great insights into using some of that personal information, especially when we're analyzing evidence-based programs and those types of things and serving the public. But we have to make sure that we have all of the security and guardrails around how we're collecting and using that data and being transparent and accountable in the way we use that data. And so the technology lets us gain more insights, hopefully, than we ever have before. But at the same time, then we need to be cognizant of our uses and the way we're using the data. The purpose limitation is what we think about in privacy. I shared this information with you for a particular purpose. Mm-hmm. And then if an agency wants to reuse it in a different way, then we need to look at, was that really what the person understood they were consenting to when they shared the information originally?
I love that you brought up a little bit around consent and then trustworthiness. One of the things, and you talked about the evolution of technology. I know one thing that your office has been working at a lot over the past years, probably at this point, is around automated decision systems and the use of automation and technology, including kind of the recent developments of advanced artificial intelligence models. Continuing on the thread of the evolution of technology and the evolution of privacy, what are you seeing in the space of automation and AI and automated decision systems? And how are you thinking about the best ways that we can address the challenges that come with those kind of that arc that we're in right now?
Yeah, we are in the thick of it right now when we're talking about artificial intelligence, because there's so many different initiatives and use cases and ways that we're thinking about introducing this type of technology. I would say right now, the focus that my office has in providing guidance and insight is really thinking about some of those fundamental principles in the use of artificial intelligence. And so, especially if we're talking about using artificial intelligence with personal information. And so we want to be very transparent, I think, in order to be clear about the government, right? And how we're using people's data possibly with artificial intelligence. I would say right now, that gets into some of our higher risk use cases that we really want to be paying attention to. But some of the initiatives that I've seen right now are playing with less sensitive information and not personal information, looking at things like laws and policies, other public information that we don't get into some of those privacy issues. But at the same time, we are working through articulating risk assessments and risk threshold analyses, and then impact assessments in terms of when we really start thinking about the use cases for AI and automated decision systems as an example, where we want to make sure we're putting in appropriate guardrails and safeguards so that we are using technology to help people and not harm them.
I like that. And I want to kind of start to close out by talking about a subject that's slightly not quite as heavy as the intersection of AI and privacy. But I really, one of the things I've appreciated about your program is the privacy principles that you have that are very open and consumable and very easily usable. And then the work you've been doing on training and educating and awareness. So could you kind of talk about how did you get to the privacy principles? And then what are you doing around education and awareness, and kind of where do you see that going from your program?
Yeah, so the privacy principles were based on the FIPS, was one of like I mentioned, the granddaddy. Mm-hmm. And we worked with the other state agencies to sort of decide what Washington's privacy principles were. And that was part of the duty of the office, was to articulate the privacy principles for the state. But those are foundational in terms of how we approach every other piece of using personal information in Washington. So
I think you mentioned one of them was purpose limitation.
Purpose limitation, due diligence, which is really making sure you're sharing information and have good contracts in place with trusted, vendors and partners. One that I haven't touched on yet, which is very foundational, especially for AI, is lawful, fair, and responsible use. So making sure you have legal authority to collect and use the information, that you were transparent and honest about how you were planning to use the information, and then being responsible. And that gets into some of the pieces where we really talk about responsible AI, and trustworthy AI really feeds into a lot of those things. So the privacy principles are foundational. And the reason they're so great, and I'm going to nerd out here, is because they really help to ground us in how we operationalize privacy. And so we have just put into place an enterprise privacy policy for the state. And so we are able to crosswalk every section of that policy to a particular privacy principle to show how we are actually putting privacy into action in the state.
That is like the policy nerd plus the privacy nerd combined into the super nerd.
The practitioner.
Love that. Really cool. And then the last thing is just on training. I know your office has been really focused on awareness, not just awareness for privacy professionals, but for everybody who works or may serve the public. So can you talk about kind of your philosophy on training and awareness, and where you how you kind of feel about that function of the program and where it's going?
Yes. So we're very proud of the privacy basics training that we created. I've gotten lots of great feedback about that. And it's becoming mandated through the policy. Agencies can use their other privacy trainings if they want, but we have this available to them to use. And then I'm really excited that we will be debuting pretty soon sort of privacy training 201, which is really more about actual privacy program and our privacy framework. And that helps agencies really put some of these privacy principles into action. And so that training is going to be more for privacy nerds, but it will be open and accessible to anybody as soon as we get it done. And we're hoping to have that done shortly this fall.
So cool. I didn't think privacy nerds could be this cool.
Yes.
Very awesome.
We're cool nerds.
Yeah. Very cool. Thank you for coming and talking about what you're working on.
Thanks.